I would now like to open it to the audience. So if you have any questions for the panel members, please go ahead. We have some 15 minutes left to conclude this session.
Good morning. I'm Dev Mukherjee, a lawyer from Supreme Court. I should mention that the statement of Mr. Pai is not appreciated because Section 58 of the UK Finance Act 2008 did in fact cause retrospective taxation in the UK for an act which was passed by British Parliament in 2008. So retrospective taxation in itself is not illegal, and there are a lot of cases pending in the Supreme Court, yes, it is true, but it's not a reason for harassment of the litigants. It's just the fact that India is such a hugely populated country. There are so many number of cases pending that it takes time for them to, to get off the list. So that's a fact.
My dear chap, I know about the UK case, I know about the Chinese case. It was for a very particular issue.
You mentioned retrospective taxation is illegal.
No, please. After a lot of care and consultation, they did it. And one of the issues was about income arising out of a decline in the value of a bond. It's a very complicated issue. There was consultation. That's not a good example to follow. Nobody in the world has gone back 50 years to amend the law. Please show me any country. See, let us not justify something which is wrong. And I'm sure the Supreme Court is striking on because of impossibility. It is impossible to have done that act because you've gone back and retrospect. Let's not stand up for something which is wrong, okay? Just because some country does that. Nobody does that. No civilized society goes back 50 years to amend the law. Please. We've done a mistake.
Correct. And Mohan, let me just, if I may, just add on that, because that particular justification was being peddled very widely at one point. The important thing about the UK example, when the Supreme Court struck down the government's interpretation of a particular tax law and upheld the appeal of the taxpayer, government went to Parliament and said, we want to put the law back to what we always thought it was, perfectly entitled to do so. But they did not then charge tax to the taxpayer who had won the appeal and got the interpretation of the law, upheld by the Supreme Court. That was the critical difference between what the UK government did and what the previous Indian government did. And I just spell that out because, as I say, the myth that, oh, no, the British government did that, so it's perfectly fine for the Indian government to do that, it's not true.
It's not true.
Good morning, I'm Kalyan Bose of Grant Thornton. Isn't one of the issues about taxation in this country the fact that most people don't pay tax? And the government's tendency to say, well, you're registered, you're compliant, so we'll put more on you because we know you're going to pay it.
Okay, let's go with data. Out of 1.2 billion people, 900 million people live on $1.5 a day, so don't have tax-paying capacity. You've got a 300 million middle class, and the middle class includes children, okay? A family of 5. That is 60 million households. Out of 60 million households, 40 million pay tax. 4 crores pays tax. So, yeah, there is tax evasion. It's not so high as people believe what it is, okay? Most people pay tax. Yes, a few people don't pay tax. The key issue is some in business, where they don't have withholding tax as source, they don't declare the entire tax for various reasons because they believe the rurals are extortionists in this country. We've got a big history, and people feel that the ruler imposes tax, and for the tax you get nothing. So we need a mind change, all right? And we have always, made heroes out of non-taxpayers. We know who they are. We can see them all over the place. So this is a complex issue, but it's not as big as you think it is. There is a little bit of tax evasion, not so big as things are. And the data shows very clearly.
Mohan, the other thing is there is a lot of structural changes which is happening, which is going to actually take care of this small segment which Mohan is talking about. For example, the latest move by the central bank to structurally create payments bank. Now, payments bank is nothing but ultimately, in a way, it is going to take away the cash. It's going to take away the wallet from your pocket. So if you're not using cash for your payment, how would you evade tax? So it's indirect way of bringing that parallel economy, if it is, into the system which will then be caught by the taxation. So there are a lot of structural changes happening there. And look at till a few years ago, we were all paying taxes standing in the queue. Now most direct, indirect, central, state, all taxes are all paid online, assessments are done online. So these facilities and systemic change will make a big difference.
You know, I'll give you another piece of data. Our tax to GDP ratio is 18% for the federal government and the state government. It's 18%, state taxes and all that. The United States is 25%, if I remember rightly. I don't know about Europe. And, you know, about 15-16% of GDP is agriculture, on which you don't get any taxes, all right? And we got so many poor people. So 18% is not bad. It's pretty good. And we're growing up. We'll probably be 20% in another 4-5 years. So, you know, we must analyze data about all this. I've been on tax commissions for the government of India for the last 10 years. We've gone through much of this data, and it's not as bad as it seems.
Good morning. I'm Javed. I'm from Perkins. And my question is around ease of doing business in India. And first of all, we all agree and accept that we are going in the right direction. We are growing. And there are challenges and risks, and therefore the returns also, taking off from what Dr. Pai said. It's very heartening to hear that. But on the ground, the realities are really different. And I just want to suggest and ask the esteemed panelists to think in this direction. One is, you know, the government forms, etc., which are required for initial approvals, and then the yearly, you know, filing of the returns and things like that, etc. And more often than not, you will find that these informations are to be filled up in number of, you know, forms, duplication of information. That also came up in the discussion. So one suggestion is, why can't we have the e-governance model where all data coming from the IT background is centralized? Now, I have a situation where I built up a chimney based upon the level defined by MIDC, and the airport authority in India comes and says that level is wrong. Right. And I can see a chimney higher than my chimney, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one suggestion. The second suggestion is, see, most of the companies are very ethical, and I can vouch for my company, which is quite ethical. And therefore, why do we have to have a, you know, inspection of information that I'm giving? Why can't we work on self-certification? Many governments, and today, you know, luckily I was thinking about it yesterday night, and today one government, I wouldn't name it because I don't want to be political, and he suggested self-certification. So these are the two things. And the other thing is that we are saying that we are going in the right direction, we are on track and we'll get there. But I don't think my children accept that. They want it yesterday. So why can't we do this fast? Let us set standards. Why can't we have forms, all digitized, 1, 2, or 3 forms? How much time will be required to fill up those forms, all those quantified by the government?
You know, ease of business has become a hot topic in the last 1-2 years with the new Prime Minister, so we're going to see much more change. Delhi, for example, has said self-certification. It's very good because it removes corruption. And inspection now in Karnataka, they just want to abolish inspection and have lots by electronically because, you know, you have to enforce the law. You know, they have to come once in a while to see whether you exist. So, they, you know, they have to do their law. Law is very clear. But they want to do it in a very unobtrusive way. I think it's going to happen. So, I think things are moving in the right direction. And we are very impatient. And please remember, we are fighting a battle against a system which controls and seeks rent. They don't want to give the power. Very reluctant. So, we got to break in and make them electronically remove the power. I'll give you a piece of data. I just read yesterday that the tax department had 20 million people file returns electronically, okay, just now. Out of 20 million returns, 4 million returns were assessed, and about 2.2 refunds were made for individuals within 30 days. That's pretty good. Very good. Compared to 2 years, 3 years when they made refunds, this is pretty good. You know, and I sat on the panel to suggest that in 2004 and spent 5 years working to make it happen. It's actually happening. It's pretty good. But people give away the power very reluctantly. It's a power struggle. It'll take time.
Sir, but those two specific points which you mentioned, Mr. Amitabh Kant was here yesterday. I received a presentation from his office yesterday evening, And the first 2 points of his presentation actually talked about those two issues. There is a work happening on the self-certification, and I touched upon that. And you would see that getting rolled out other places also. That's what we hear from the ministry. And clearly data sharing, because the data exists in the different silos, the data sharing, why can't I use the same form where I've already submitted the data and I just link it? That also has started happening now, not only at the center but also at the state level. It's a very valid point. Really.
And we need judicial reform. For example, let me give you data again because data is interesting. 50 years ago, we had 12 judges per million population. We have 13 or maybe 14 judges per million population. We need 50. America is 100. We are underinvested in the justice system. So the backlog of cases, all of us suffer. As citizens, we suffer. Of course, it takes you 20 years to liquidate a company. The Bank of China, which supposed to be liquidated in 1962 after the war, is still, I think, undergoing the liquidation process. So liquidation of companies is a challenge. Enforcement of contracts is a challenge. It takes you 10, 15 years. It's very sad. Probably the British did it much better when they ruled us rather than now. It's disgraceful. We are not invested in the justice system. We don't have enough courts. We don't have enough judges. We don't have enough prosecutors because the government thinks that it is not good to invest in justice because they pass orders against the government. So the politicians tell me. They pass orders against us, strictures against us.
Politicians really hate that.
Yeah, so we don't want to invest. They forget that justice is a prime responsibility of the state. You have to do it. And we are suffering. They too suffer. When the government, they're okay, they too suffer. So we have to get this done. And now I think the thought is coming. And Patricia, we don't draft our laws well. The skill of drafting the laws is gone. Yeah. The 1862 Indian Contract Act is such a beautiful piece of English. Yes. Macaulay, I think, wrote that. It's fantastic. After that, we lost. Now, NGOs are coming up. Young people from the National Law School were drafting laws and giving them drafts. So we need to invest in that. We are not invested enough in running our society. We invested in giving subsidies and political things, but not that. So, we have to build that. Yeah. So I think, we are on the way.
Right. And I really welcome the fact the government is very clearly set on establishing a system of commercial courts, for which there's some great examples around the world. And I think that could be extremely helpful in speeding up some of this stuff.